This is Mr. Evans. This video considers fiscal policy and taxation, and it's part of our look at the external environment, part of our pestle analysis. Fiscal policy and taxation form part of the economic environment, and we're looking at the opportunities and threats created for business as a result of changes in these aspects of the economic environment. So fiscal policy we can define as the use of government spending and taxation to influence economic activity. This diagram is called the circular flow of income. I talked to people through it on the first video I did in this section on the economy. Each of these arrows represent a flow of income around the economy. Now the government is quite a major player in the economy and withdraws money through taxation and injects money to the economy through government spending. So using government spending and taxation can be a way that the government can use to either expand the economy if the economy is doing not as well as the government wants it to, or maybe even use it as a contractionary measure if maybe inflation is creeping up, which is causing dangers to the economy. The government can maybe withdraw some money through taxation and influence the level of economic activity that way. So that's what fiscal policy is all about, attempting to influence the level of economic activity through taxation and spending. So first of all, we'll look at taxation. There are two types of taxation that the government can alter. There are direct taxes, which are taxes on income and they affect incentives to work. So there's income tax and corporation tax. Increases in these will reduce incentives to work. So income tax is charged against individuals. Income tax, if the government increases the level of income tax, the government is taking more money away from people who are working, so that might affect their incentives to maybe go for a promotion or do overtime. Corporation tax is money that is taken by the government from an organisation's profits. So if corporation tax were to go up, the government, businesses might think, well, why should we bother investing lots of money in potentially risky schemes if the government's just going to take away all our taxes? So the government can alter direct taxes, or they can alter indirect taxes. Indirect taxes are taxes on spending, things like VAT and duties. They affect production and consumption choices. In other words, indirect taxes are often used to dictate behaviour or have an impact at least on individuals' behaviour. So indirect taxes such as duties are placed on things like cigarettes and alcohol in order to make them more expensive, so consumers are less willing and able to buy them, and it also has an effect on the businesses that produce them. If duties go up, it increases the cost of production for those businesses and they produce less of those products. So let's just say the government wants to boost the economy by cutting taxes. Well, what's going to happen if they cut direct taxes? Well, first of all, it's going to increase workers' incentive to work because income taxes are falling. Workers get to keep more of the money that they earn, therefore they might be more incentivised to work overtime, go for promotions, get a pay rise because they get to keep more of that money. New workers may enter the workforce, people who were previously perhaps satisfied with the level of benefits that they got. Now they see that it's more rewarding to work, so they enter the workforce, which creates opportunities for business to employ more staff. Workers should generally be more highly motivated at work because they're getting to keep more of their money. And of course it's good for businesses because workers have more disposable income. If the government's charging, letting them take home more money from their wages, it increases the amount of money they've got to spend. So that's going to increase profitability because businesses are going to be selling more money, but also the government is taking away less money from corporations on their profits, from businesses on their profits. So businesses are going to be more profitable, they're going to have more money to either reinvest in the business or they have more money to pay to shareholders. However, in terms of like maybe threats to a business, there may be more incentive for new businesses to enter the market. Okay, people see that it becomes more rewarding to start up a business because corporation taxes have fallen, and therefore businesses take risks. Maybe businesses diversify into new markets, which increases competitiveness in them. And overall, cutting direct taxes will increase incentives for businesses to invest and take risks because they get to keep more of their profit. If the government was thinking of cutting indirect taxes, well, falls in VAT reduce selling prices, which should increase sales. If taxes are reduced on products, it reduces the cost of production on businesses. Businesses increase their output. That's good for the supply of goods and services. However, in reality, it's unlikely that some indirect taxes will be cut. It's not likely that the government's going to cut tax on cigarettes or alcohol or fuel or any of these goods that cause what we call negative externalities anytime soon. So on the other hand, we've got government spending. So governments can either raise or increase taxes depending on what they want to do to the economy. They can also raise or increase their spending. So a budget deficit is expansionary. Well, what do I mean by that? Okay, so a budget deficit, the government has a budget every year, just like most businesses. Now, if the amount of money that the government is getting in is less than the amount of money that the government is spending, they're going to have a deficit. Okay, when government spending is greater than taxation, the government has a deficit, but that's expansionary for the economy. Okay, because the government's injecting more money into the economy than it withdraws through taxation. So more money is going in here than the government is taking out, and that would be expansionary for the economy. A budget surplus occurs when actually the government takes in more in taxation than it spends, and that would be contractionary. And the government may wish to kind of slow down the economy if they're worried about the effects of inflation. So governments can run a budget deficit where they spend more than they tax, or they can run a surplus where they tax more than they spend, depending on what they want to do to the economy. So these are the different areas that government spend in. So let's just say that the government is going to increase spending in all of these areas. So welfare is like benefits. Well, what opportunities and threats does that present? Well, the least well off in society are going to benefit from this. So what's going to be the impact on the business's product portfolios? Okay, will they need to adjust their product portfolios to include products that are going to appeal to people on lower incomes who are receiving a higher amount of money from the government? Businesses will need to think through what sort of impact increases in welfare will have. Might actually be a threat, because maybe some workers who are on low wages will think, well, hang on a sec, why am I working for a minimum wage when I can earn more money because the government's increased welfare? So I might leave this job. Okay, so there could be threats for that as well. In terms of government increases in healthcare, we may get a more healthier and productive workforce as a result. On the other hand, if the government were cutting spending in healthcare, businesses may find needing to make decisions about, well, okay, so there's less spending on healthcare may be less good, maybe we need to provide private healthcare for our employees. Okay, so opportunities and threats as a result of changes in healthcare spending. Education and training is a massive area of spending for the government. If the government increases spending on education, adult training, we're going to have an increasingly skilled workforce. We may need to alter our training programs. Okay, I'm not saying we're not going to need to train our workers, but if we're getting in a higher caliber of worker in the first place, well, we don't want to be teaching them stuff they already know. We want to be training them with and improving their skills even further. So we have to consider what their training requirements are going to be. Spending on defence, on the army, on the navy. There's huge kind of defence industry in the UK. Lockheed Martin, I think they're an American company actually. BAE Systems, I think the British one is. they actually manufacture weapons, but there are lots of support industries that are required to support these services. People who make uniforms, people who supply the food to the army. Okay, so lots of opportunities there if defence spending goes up. Government increase in transport spending and improving infrastructure and so on. Transport infrastructure may encourage investment in a new geographical area, or if the government decides to build a new runway at Heathrow and it's going to become easier to export our product overseas, that might open up new markets for us. Increases in infrastructure spending on gas, electricity pipelines, broadband, that's likely to benefit businesses by cutting their cost of production, making them more efficient. We can use broadband better, we're going to have faster broadband and be able to increase our website's capabilities. Okay, so all sorts of opportunities and threats presented to businesses as a result of changes in fiscal policy and taxation.